Welcome to the Grow and Glow podcast, a show aimed at helping young people deal with issues in their lives and also live productively. Here's your host, Gracie Emo.
Another episode of Grow and Glow podcast, and on today's episode we have a star with us, like star capital letter S. Today our guest is Adura, and he is the podcast host of Shaking Tables podcast. And today we're going to be talking about podcasting, the work that comes with podcasting, the fun parts about podcasting, even the stress in podcasting. In fact, everything we know about podcasting will be said in this episode. We're going to try to say everything as short as possible. So make sure you listen and share this episode. I beg, share. Nobody you go enjoy good thing, Adura, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm chill. I will thank God for life. I'm glad to be here.
Okay. So thank you so much for joining me here, and we are happy to have you here. I love giving my guests the opportunity to introduce themselves in their own special way. So, who is the man behind Shaking Tables podcast?
I say now, man. I'm barely even a boy.
Now, man, you be you.
Hi, my name is Abela Aduragemi, and I'm a podcaster, a fellow podcaster, amidst other things. I don't know, I'm feeling like, when for Christians, when you have a guest pastor, and the guest pastor is like seated, folding his arms, like seated, that's how I'm feeling right now.
Welcome to this
I'm really happy that we could make this happen. There's a backstory for this happening. I don't know if we're going to get into that, but anyways, I'm glad to be here, and take it away.
Okay, all right. So, your full name? There's a way you pronounce your name on your podcast. AA. Right. I don't know how to pronounce your surname, so I don't know. Let me not spoil it, please. Just let's just know you a little more.
Okay. Okay. Let me just do my signature introduction, right?
Now, Oshe.
Hi. Okay. Hi. What's up? My name is Abela Dragini, and I'd like to welcome you to the Shaking Tables podcast. That's basically it. I am. Who am I? I'm a social media person, enthusiast, social media manager, like that career line, and fresh graduate. I'm looking for bastard money. Also a podcaster because I talk a lot. So I'll try not to be the star of this show because this is not my show. So I'll just take the back seat.
Please, you're allowed. Today about stars. Everybody's a star here, Right. All right, thank you so much. So your podcast, Shaking Tables podcast, what is it about?
Okay. Well, my podcast is about me, and I know that that might be a selfish thing to say, but just hear me out. There's like a backstory to almost everything that everybody does. So mine is I discovered that I enjoy talking about myself, right? And I realized that many of the things that I go through, almost every other 20-something-year-old go through it. So I decided to make myself the guinea pig of every other person. So anytime I feel like I'm seeing something that maybe is exclusive to me, I put it out, I create content about that. Basically documentary of my own life to see if we can just learn together, grow together. And that's just the idea for me anyways.
Okay, so when did you start podcasting?
Wow, that's a very good question. Well, I started podcasting approximately about, 2-3 years ago.
Okay. Wow, that's it's been a long while, Shao. Okay. So you said your podcast is basically just like about you, which is fine because people learn from experiences from people. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So, which is still basically very, very fine. But now, how did you find out about podcasts? Because I think podcasts just became very popular. I don't know, for me, I would say personally, last year is a year when people got to know about podcasting. And you started your own podcast like 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So where did you hear about podcasts? How did you know you should even use a podcast instead of maybe YouTube? Because I know YouTube is still more popular in a way.
Yeah. So like I said earlier, there's a backstory to almost everything. And for me, I'd been creating content long before I had the podcast. I've been experimenting with stuff on the internet. I used to write. I used to send broadcast messages to people on Mondays while I was in my 200 level in university. I think it all changed when I think I was in 300 level. I attended a seminar by NIFES, a fellowship in the university, campus fellowship, and they called on. I wasn't even impacted, which is weird. I wasn't necessarily impacted by the guests that came to speak. Right, it was the people that were speaking with that they were speaking to. Right, I met this person, her name is Dr. and she also writes, but I don't know. All of a sudden, she said she has a podcast, and this is how she did it. That she couldn't like write so much that she just wanted to portray her emotions in words, and that was my first. That was my first, instance to podcast. I think that's the word I'm looking for, encounter to podcast. And right after that, I decided to experiment, and 3 years later, here we are.
Nice. Wow. My own story is very funny. When you just hear the word podcast in your ears, that's how I got to find out about mine.
Wow.
Like, God is good.
Indeed.
Like, I didn't know anything about podcasting. I just wanted to look for like a platform where I can find just using my voice, because I was like, oh, I'm shy. I'm very shy. Then, not now. I really won't shy for. So like, I was like, oh, I just want to use my voice and not my face or anything. So that's how I found out about podcasting. So now, like, about podcasting again, this episode is about podcasting and you, basically, because I think it's best, the lessons are best drawn from experiences, personal experiences. That's how I'll be asking you more questions about your podcast personally. I know as podcasters, sometimes we get tired, truthfully, no matter what. But because of a drive that we have concerning the podcast, or just a simple reason we just have concerning the podcast that keeps us going on. So would you love to share, like, what's that drive behind you keeping, like, you keep posting your episodes for 3 years? Three.
Wow. Well, I don't think you should give me all of those credits, because I would say I was consistent back to back for those 3 years, right?
Okay.
But I was consistent for the most part of it, and I have my days, right? Some days in which I didn't even do anything up until the very last minutes that I'm supposed to put out stuff, and some of the podcasts that I just record randomly, people get to resonate with it, and to answer the question, what keeps me going? I think for me, podcast has become a way of life, and I don't mean that to sound deep or anything, but prior to when I started podcasting, I had a lot of issues. I wasn't confident. I do not talk outside publicly. All of my opinions, I just used to swallow them, because I won't say I'm an overthinker, but I think that people are thinking about me, and I think worst. So I just don't say anything outside. Right, but for podcast, I could be anyone and anything, and you don't get to see my face. I just get to talk my shit. I just get to talk my stuff, and I don't get to be judged. And before I started having guests, I was just doing my thing. I think, specifically as I went into podcasting fully in my 300 level second semester, that was my IT, and I remember I would be writing like what I want. I'll be reading it out like a script, right? But now just being right. But for the consistent thing, for what has kept me going, it's been people, right? And that's weird, because I've come to realize that my podcast has done so much good than I can possibly ever have dreamt or imagined. Right? People saying that their lives are impacted by just listening to a conversation, and it's truly a humbling experience. I mean, my podcast is referred to as one of the best or earliest podcasts in my university. I'm one of the first podcasters ever, and that is something that you can't take away from me. So I've learned that even if it is one person that's listening to your podcast, you have no idea the dominoes effect it can cause. And trust me, there's been lots of people going into podcasting just because of they have seen my consistency, and there's a lot of backstory there, but I'd just like to stop for now.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. I think when people listen to podcasts and we get to like feedbacks about how they feel, what they learned, or just one or two things, even though it's something very small, it's it keeps us moving.
Yeah.
So talking about like podcasting again, you recording, you say you're using scripts before. Yeah, you're just like
Yes.
reading it out like a script. So now how do you produce a podcast? Not don't give us the too much. No, some people before they be confused now with all the tech.
No.
But how
I'm looking for
uh-huh.
this quickest way to even say this, right?
All right.
So like I said earlier, I went into podcasting fully during my IT period, and sometimes I would just be writing stuff, scribbling things down, and shuffling. I'm reading it like news, right? But for my growth process, which I'm grateful for, I started recording on my iPhone 6. That was like 3 years ago, and I'll just lock myself in. Then the lockdown happened, and the lockdown had a huge thing to play because everybody was doing a lot of stuff, right? Everybody was bored, and that was a way for me to like propagate the gospel of my podcast. And I started having interviews with people remotely. I would lock myself in my wardrobe and just like record with my phone, use a selfie stick as a stand for my phone so that the mouthpiece would be directly to my mouth, right? And all about that stuff. But I won't say that I'm there yet, but I'm just grateful for my growth because I don't even reach right now. Sometimes I will just go into podcasting and I'll just. For me, podcast, like I said, it has become a way of life. In my room, when I had a room, anyways, I just use like my mic. My setup is going to be there. So whenever I feel like venting, I just vent into my podcast, and it becomes content that I make it so relatable to people that everybody can equally learn from it. So while I'm releasing my frustration or my knowledge of some sorts to people, I am getting an active feedback. So that's how my growth process has been basically.
Okay. No, I just remembered I saw on your status once. You guys went to a mountain top to record an episode, right?
Yeah, that was
like you make podcasting look so fun. Like, I never knew that could happen whereby someone would go on a mountain top, like won't like breeze, sounds, birds and everything disturb. But Adura, you did it. like
and there's a lot more that I want to do. There's a lot more that I want to do.
Exactly. I feel one thing you've made me see is that no matter how complicated to some people and how it might look like work, let me call it like work, there are so many ways you can make it still fun personally for you, recording and enjoying and still dishing out hot topics,
Yeah.
So wow, thank you for giving us like something to see. I'm like, okay, what I'm doing is still cool. I can still do it in another way than the normal way. Yeah. Wow. Thank you again. All right, so concerning podcasting, like as podcaster, I think I've said this before. I spoke about the drive, what like makes you keep going. But now I don't know if you've ever had this experience whereby there are days you don't want to record at all. Like you did not even record. Maybe you had a break, but it was not intentional. Just because like you just ran out of the the energy for podcasting wasn't there. Have you had such days before?
Yes, I think everyone has those days that you just don't feel equally confident, or you don't feel like yourself, or you have a lot of things going on in your personal life that you don't even have time for podcasting, and it's totally understandable. Like even me, like and let me let you know a little secret, right? Almost every episode that I release till this very moment, like right after, I'm like, bro, I'm not doing this shit anymore because I'm not doing this anymore. Not because of I don't want to, but because of I feel like I should be on some level, right? And but whenever I get to podcasting and I'm talking to my mic, talking to my guest, every time I get reminded why I do this, and it's refreshing when I get these responses from people that even like I'm not as blown as I want to be. Like I want to be the Cutty of podcast, man. But I'm not there yet. But the people that I'm able to impact is a lot for me, bro. And I can't emphasize that enough. So for me, those days that I feel like I don't want to record, I still do, right? Before, although creating podcast is some sort of creation, but before I was a podcaster, I was a content creator. And days that I don't feel like creating, I will still create, even though I know that it's going to be crappy content. I will still create for mine, like to keep up that consistency for my own sake, right? So like I said, I'm not creating because of I want to. I'm doing it for myself. That's become, if I don't vent, I feel meant. Right, so
it's part of you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So, what do you enjoy the most about podcasting?
Well, wow, that's a very, 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 very big question. Because,
really?
Yes, I know it might seem like a very simple one, but it's a very big one because I've learned a lot just by podcasting. I've learned to interview people. I've learned to be an excellent communicator. I've learned to be a ladies' guy just by podcasting. I've learned a lot just by conversing, just by knowing how people, like how their heads work. Sometimes when I ask you a question, I don't ask you a question because of the initial response. I'm asking you the question for the next couple of questions I finally want to ask you. So I build up my questions, right? So basically, podcasts I mean, it's a way of life for me, man. And basically, podcast is a lot, man. I don't know how to explain it, right? And come me say I know if you can't drop podcast in the next decade or the next 5 years, when reality, or if reality eats me. But from where I'm standing now, I've made a pledge to myself that whatever sphere I find myself, I'm just gonna keep talking, because I mean, no matter how tired of life you are, you will still talk, right? And podcast is just a way for me to, like, okay, 1 hour out of 1 week is not enough problems that I cannot talk.
True. And people need to even listen to what you have to say. They want to hear what you have to say, because people are looking for who to listen to, you know. So it's good. You're there for them.
Very correct.
Yeah, that's it. I know. I've heard a lot of people chat me up and like, I want to start a podcast, blah 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 podcast, something podcast. I'm like, okay. And most times when those people chat me up and ask me about podcasting, and I kind of explain like what's up now, what we do as podcasters, I don't know what happens, but they don't ever start their podcast. And I'm like, is it overthinking that's causing this? So do you have any advice for anybody who is listening right now, and this person might be overthinking about whether he or she should start a podcast this year, in fact this year or even this month? Like, what advice will you give out to this person?
I think we've made this conversation a bit very selfish, because we're saying podcast that. I think the conversation is way beyond podcast. The conversation is about creating and doing what you actually want to do, right? Because I think as human beings, we can. Our sole purpose on earth is to serve, right? And and I'm not trying to be religious or Christian or whatnot, right? But when you come to the realization that your life is tied to some people's reality, some people you automatically have this audience, you automatically have this influence that you are responsible for the growth of some people, you will know that you have to speak your truth, no matter how frustrating it might be, right? So whether or not you should start your podcast is up to you. Just understand that some people are actually having a terrible life because you have not started. Some people's life could be so much better just by you saying how terrible your life has been. Because I mean, we are all creators. Our lives are an autobiography waiting to happen. So you just need to be constructive about how you put your content. It might not be podcast for you. For you, it might be writing. If you have Medium, Medium is so for free, right? For you, it might be making a vlog. For you, it might be cooking. Right, it's a lot, right? It may not even be talking to an audience. It could be a one-on-one impact. Just whatever you do, remember that you are you are here to serve. The act of service is like what we are entirely here for. That's what we are here. Friendship. So podcast is just a means to an end, right? So if you are doubting whether or not you should start podcast, you should make that move. This is your sign, bro. Make that freaking move. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, thank you. No, this just reminded me of something. But being a podcaster does not limit you to just talking and everything. Adura now has a YouTube channel, even though he has had it since, but you are now posting video content. You are moving, adding video content is part of the podcast.
All right, let me tell you this story. Sorry that I'm interrupting you. Let me tell you this story.
No, it's fine. Okay.
Podcasting has opened my eyes, has given me job opportunities more than I can realize. Like an example is I've gotten to edit people's podcasts with celebrities like Johnny Drill, Druga, Alpha P. Some of these guys are like, and what did I do? I only attended a podcast seminar and I took interest in one of the speakers, and apparently it was a celebrity OAP, and now like Mans is our brother and we talk. And when you are a podcaster, you are your own editor, you are your own video vixen, you are your own PR, you are your own social media management. And of this way, you learn to do some things that people naturally will take their time to go and learn. You will just learn it from the sake of the podcasting, but you don't know when this knowledge will transcend into your own life. Like some of the jobs I've gotten as a social media person, it was because of people thought I was consistent at my podcast, and the person was like, if this human being can be consistent at his podcast, sending me broadcast messages every Friday non-stop, I think he can do his job. And yeah, it's so, I mean, like I said, it's way beyond podcasts.
It is. So you can do a podcast, you can also add YouTube to it. I think there's something you can also do. There was someone on, how we put this now, we did that 25 days challenge, and one of my podcast friend, I realized what she does on her podcast is vlogging. I know vlogging is more of a YouTube thing. Like she comes every day, or maybe she's traveling somewhere, she just tell you about her experience like an influencer right on the podcast. You are not seeing her, but you are hearing her voice, and her box is rolling, her traveling bag or something is rolling, or she's in an airport or something like that. So she's sharing her story. I'll share you a link. So she's sharing her story, she's talking about what she likes, she's doing what she loves, even though she's not sitting down in a studio and recording. She's moving up and down, but she's editing it well and sending it out, and people enjoy. I love that episode because it made me feel like I was traveling with her. So there's a lot you can do with podcasting. You're not just limited to just sitting down with a mic in a room doing one thing. Adura has gone on the mountaintop. Okay.
I honestly believe that everyone should be a podcaster, and I say this because when you are a podcaster, you become confident. Like you just
there's a skill it just comes with
one thing. Like okay, for you don't obviously when somebody asks me how I am such a good podcaster, I will tell you I feel like I'm a terrible podcaster. That feeling that a new podcaster gets whenever he wants to record, I get it every time I want to record, every single time. Right, but because of it's something that I've been doing over the years, it's easy for me to like just wave it off. Right, imagine doing something every week, you just become automatically good at it. So much so that it enters your personal life, and you start to talk as if you're on the podcast. Like sometimes I'm talking to somebody and she's like, especially ladies, she's like, "I drop your podcast, boy. Talk to me normally," and I'm like, "Sorry, I can't tell you that." Right?
I've heard that too.
It's like I said, it's a way of life. Whether or not I would make money out of this, which by the way, I've made money in 6 figures just from my podcast, by the way, but that's another conversation, right? Whether or not
I'll call you up for that one soon.
Whether or not you make money from podcasting, I believe everyone should be a podcaster because it helps you discover yourself. It helps you discover things that set you off. It helps you to, because having a co-host on a podcast is not an easy thing, because you have to deal with the person's emotional stress. You have to deal with, be responsible for the person. You have to reach the mood. You have to, like, it's a lot, and these things will help you become a better person, a better teammate. And I mean, I've said enough. I mean, I'm done talking right now. So
yes, and podcasting brings like wonderful connections, friendships. Not just a lot. It brings a lot. Imagine your voice is heard in like a lot of countries you've never even set your foot in. Your voice has gone. Your voice has gone to 32 countries. Yeah.
I'm telling you,
So
man.
it's a lot.
Okay. To even materialize, it's not just my voice has gone. I have a merch. My merch has traveled more than myself, bro. My merch is UK, I have merch in the US, and I'm like, okay, so maybe one by one I'm going, because okay, my hoodie has gone, my shirt has gone. Very soon.
Again, that's a
Inshallah.
sign.
but
You go
yeah,
Japa.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a sign. No, that is awesome. It's awesome. Thank you so much, Adura, for being here. Thank you.
It means, and I'm sorry, we had to be scheduled like 2 times because of my terrible timing. I really apologize for that.
Please, it's okay. As far as you're here, we've done this. It's perfect. But wait first, we need to find you online. My listeners, I'm sure they would love to connect with you online. So how can they connect with you online?
Yes. Please listen to my podcast. Although I'm not in podcasting for the numbers. At least it will be nice to know that I'm getting new listens and people are actually listening to my truth. So you can check out my podcast at Shaking Tables with AA. That is Shaking Tables with AA. The AA stands for Abiola Adragbemi. So that's not a big deal. And my social media is pretty much the same thing. My social media, that's my Instagram and my Twitter is Adragbemi_AA. That is ADURAGBEMI_AA. My YouTube is at Abiola Adragbemi. Basically, the name is just trying to go everywhere. And when Gracie mentioned star, let me explain what that star is.
Explain, please.
This star is STAAR in capital letter, and that what it stands for is Shaking Tables with AA. That is the A and A. Then the R is like for ownership. You know, if you want to claim ownership to something, you say owner. Like, so the R is like, now it's not just my podcast, it's for you that are listening. So now you get the R, so you are the star. You know, we're going to shine the light into the world, right?
Hey, we'll keep glowing, you know. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Glow and Grow podcast, bro. That's
yes.
What we stand for.
Grow and glow. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Grow and Glow podcast. Connect on Instagram at growandglow_podcast. And if you enjoyed the show, subscribe and leave a review.